Good evening, everyone. My name is Tahira Hira, and I am chair of the planning committee for this Sustainability Symposium. Thank you for joining us this evening. I have few housekeeping items to do before I invite President Joffrey to formally welcome you and introduce the speaker to you for tonight. Please note that there are mics in the two aisles. As soon as President Shin brings his speech to a closure, he will invite you for questions, and I will ask you that please line up behind those microphones. That will make it very easy for a lot of us to get our questions in, and it will be efficient. The second thing I want to remind you is this: those of you who have registered for tomorrow's all-day symposium, please remember to pick up your registration materials on your way out. That will make it easy in the morning for us to start our session quickly and easily. I saw many of you at the poster sessions. I hope you enjoyed them. Dr. Gene Tockley, who's here somewhere, if you would just wave your hand and let us thank you. He's a member of our Against Symposium Planning Committee, and he did a superb job of getting this session organized. And I want you to know that the poster sessions will be here tomorrow as well, so you will get another chance to take a look at them. Today, this is my pleasure to invite President Joffrey here to begin our symposium on enhancing sustainability at Iowa State University and to introduce our keynote speaker. That's because he's not only the leader of our university, but he is the leader of our university-wide Live Green initiative. This symposium and the Live Green initiative would not be happening without President Joffrey's strong personal interest in making Iowa State University more environmentally friendly. It is his vision that Iowa State become a model university in sustainability practices. Please join me in welcoming Iowa State University President Dr. Gregory Joffrey.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this opening event on our symposium on enhancing sustainability at Iowa State University. This symposium is a key part of our university-wide Live Green initiative as a way to encourage greater dialogue and discussion among members of the university community about what we can do at Iowa State to make this university more energy efficient and more sustainable. Our goal is to have Iowa State be a model campus in sustainability, and your ideas and involvement and those of other members of the community are absolutely critical to this effort. Iowa State is very clearly at our best when we come together and act together on important issues, and this symposium and the Live Green initiative are opportunities to do exactly that, to make a positive difference in our university, our community, and our world. Before introducing tonight's speaker, I want to especially thank the organizing committee for this symposium. Most certainly the chair of the committee, Tahira Hira, but also all the members of the committee, Jerry DeWitt, Bill Dieslin, Kelly Huser, and Gene Tackley. And I'd like to ask all of them to stand so we can thank you for putting this wonderful symposium together. I know that many of you have already met her, but I want to introduce tonight also our new Director of Sustainability Programs, Mary Rankin. Mary, please stand, wave. Mary has a long list of people who already want to talk to her about all the things that, ideas they have for enhancing sustainability at Iowa State. I also want to introduce a very special visitor we have tonight who came a very long way to Iowa State, Professor Katsu Minami, Vice President of Agriculture, Environment, and Medicine at Kitasato University in Tokyo, Japan, who's visiting us here in the Leopold Center. And welcome. And finally, of course, I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight and participating in this symposium. This is truly a university-wide initiative and one that really needs everyone's participation in order to be successful. It's now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Larry Shin, president of Berea College in Berea, Kentucky, a position he's held since 1994, during which time he has made Berea a model campus in energy and resource sustainability. Under his leadership, the college, among other things, offers a sustainability and environmental studies program. The college has instituted a number of green renovations to facilities on the campus, and it has an eco-village residence complex for students. Dr. Shin received his bachelor's degree in religion from Baldwin Wallace College, a master's in New Testament studies from the Drew Theological School, and a doctorate in history of religions from Princeton University. Before becoming president at Berea, Dr. Shin was a dean and vice president for academic affairs at Bucknell College in Pennsylvania, a faculty member at Oberlin College in Ohio, and he taught at a Quaker mission school in Jordan. He's written extensively on subjects ranging from religions in India to cults in America, and his most recent writings have focused on religion and ecology. I might also add that Berea College has a very special connection with Iowa State University, since Iowa State's 11th and longest serving president, Dr. Robert Parks, was a graduate of Berea. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Larry Shin.
Good evening. Is this on? You can hear me okay in the back? There we go. Great. It's a delight to be with you this evening, and thank you, President Joffrey, for your kind introduction and also introduction of Berea. And I thank you and Kathy for being such wonderful hosts and hostesses for me this evening. And I thank all of you who have made this trip here to Iowa State possible. Tonight I'm going to become philosophical, and tomorrow very practical. Tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about why it is we should act even when we don't know for sure that we must. And tomorrow I'm going to show you what has happened at a college over the last 13 years at Berea College when we acted when we didn't have to act. So tonight, let's take a journey. 1,100 years ago, a group of Polynesians climbed into boats, headed across the sea, not knowing exactly where they would land. 1,300 miles later, they landed on a volcanic uprock that was filled with palm trees. They decided to settle there and brought with them, of course, their agricultural and fishing methods that they use in Polynesia. They also brought with them 11 or 12 clans, each with their own divinity, and they situated themselves on the island in pie-shaped formats so that every clan had access to the ocean and every clan had access to the high ground and also to fresh water. There was a paramount chieftain who was over all the clans, and also was the one who parceled out the access to the large rock quarry, where each of the clans would carve out of rock very large, sometimes 10 to 14 foot tall, rock statues of their divinities, called moai. And they would cut down palm trees and move those rocks out of the quarry down near the seashore and plant these rocks, stand them up on top of ahu, which were the ground bed of their ancestors for each of the clans. They used the palm trees to make boats, to do their fishing. They seemed to be doing quite well for 500 or 600 years. But by the time Jacob Roveen, a Dutch explorer, discovered them on Christmas Sunday in 1722, there were no palm trees standing. and the islanders, now diminished from approximately 15,000 at their peak to just a few hundred, were practicing cannibalism to survive. After 800 years, the society and the culture, but most importantly, the ecology of Easter Island collapsed. Earth, planet Earth, is Easter Island. Planet Earth is Easter Island. That's a dramatic claim that Jared Diamond makes in his book called Collapse, written in 2005. The full title of the book is Collapse: How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed. And Jared Diamond makes the case that we on Earth are somewhere in that 800-year journey, metaphorically speaking, as Earth. We've not cut down the last palm tree, of course. But we are somewhere in that journey on this sphere moving through space in which we have limited resources, we have growing populations, we're decimating the rainforests, we're overfishing the fisheries. We at planet Earth are Easter Island. Now, when I read Jared Diamond's book, I was a little bit skeptical at the beginning because the amount of scientific evidence he gave about the conditions on planet Earth being similar to the conditions translated from Easter Island seemed not fully convincing. But it's interesting that just in the past 3 or 4 years, as the scientific studies have come in one after the other, what seemed so improbable even a decade ago now seems plausible. That we humans are tampering with the very life-giving systems that support us. And therefore, unless we acknowledge that and act upon that knowledge, we too could suffer the fate of Easter Island a century or two, or perhaps less, in the future. The same year that Jared Diamond's book came out, the United Nations completed a 5-year study called the Millennial Ecological Study. It was a study of the 24 natural systems that support human life. Of course, air, water, earth, all of those things were studied. So were biodiversity, climate, fisheries, bird populations, and so on. The conclusion of this group of scientists from around the world, as I said, published the same year of Jared Diamond's book, said, 800 million people on this earth are undernourished or are starving. 1 out of every 6 of us human beings on this earth do not have access to potable water. 2.6 out of every 6 of us on this earth do not have access to proper sanitation. In addition, we are overfishing our species of fish, and we're polluting the soil and the air and the water at levels that are bound to come back to haunt us, which you'll hear in a moment is supported by other studies. The study concludes that in the last 50 years, we've seen the kind of loss of biotic diversity that is unprecedented in human history. Unprecedented. And secondly, we've seen the increase in the use of natural resources that clearly are unsustainable. The conclusion of this United Nations study, the Millennial Study, was that it will take dramatic political and social will to alter our normal way of doing business politically, economically, and personally if our systems are to survive. The study concluded that of the 24 basic systems that support human life, 15 are in decline or in unsustainable modes at the present time. 15 out of 24 of the systems that support human life. A second set of indicators comes from a book that was published somewhat earlier by a woman named Sandra Steingraber, for those of you who know her book. Her book is called Living Downstream. Sandra is a biologist, and what she did was to go back home to study the wells, the well water of the place she grew up in the Midwest, and discovered that the level of atrazine and other farm chemicals to be found in those wells, which I'm quite confident is true here in Iowa, it certainly is true in my home state of Ohio, my birth state of Ohio, was at levels that could only be harmful to human life. So she began to study the connection between this biological study of the water and the chemicals in the water with what was happening medically in the community, and discovered that cancer rates were 3 times the national population for certain kinds of cancer, that she then later, through a group of studies, linked to atrazine and some of the other chemicals that were in the water. Now, her book is fairly controversial because, just like climate studies, studies about the connection of the natural world and our human health are extremely difficult to make. It's very hard to do cause and effect. Systems are so complex. We can't say this caused that. But what she did was to, in her book, Living Downstream, point to over 100 studies that showed certain kinds of pollution and certain kinds of cancer in different parts of the world, trying to remove some of the geographic and some of the ethnic and racial differences that might be seen in her studies. She found that no matter where in the world you go, and no matter what the cancer rates were, they're about 3 times as high now as they were 50 years ago, and these are non-lung cancers, so cancers that tend to be caused from our biological processes. But then when she drilled down, she found that those who worked with PVC, polyvinyl chloride, had a 3,000 times greater chance of having liver cancer than those who didn't. That's probably a little bit more than just speculation. But the study that she reports, and these are only 3 of the studies I'm mentioning, that caught my attention because one of our daughters had just given birth to a child and was nursing that child, was that in a study of hundreds of women throughout the United States in the 1990s, they took samples of breast milk and found that 25% of the women's breast milk would not pass the FDA standards for DDT, dioxins, and PCBs. 25%. And guess who's drinking that milk? Our human bodies are repositories of that which we eat, drink, and breathe. And what she's shown in her book, Living Downstream, is that we are downstream from pollution that's happened sometimes weeks, sometimes years, sometimes decades before us. DDT, for example, for those of you who know the story of that. What about Diamond's claim that climate change is the greatest threat to those of us on planet Earth? Well, have one of you seen The Inconvenient Truth? Okay. Not a scientific study. But the same year Inconvenient Truth came out, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change published its findings, which was taken from samples, core samples, that could predict the amount of carbon dioxide in the air at different points in our human history. Most scientists will today agree that the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere 100, 150 years ago especially, pre-industrial revolution, was about 280 parts per million. Today, is 379, almost 100 parts greater than it was just about a century or a little over a century ago. This Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said that temperatures have risen, the average temperature, about 1 degree in the last century, 2 degrees in the last century and a half. That may not seem like very much, but the study concludes that if we were to rise another 2 degrees, the speculation is we would have to learn to adjust to a world in which it's really climate change. Global warming is the wrong term. For those of us who just experienced 6-degree temperature last week and an ice storm in Kentucky, I can tell you global warming was the wrong term for that. But climate change, which has unpredictability, greater and stronger storms, they come from us changing the very environment in which our human biotic sphere operates. It is that about which this Intergovernmental Panel was concerned. Melting glaciers, rising oceans, countries like Bangladesh simply going out of existence. It only takes a half a meter of rise in the oceans to make an enormous difference. Centimeters will even make a difference. So Diamond concludes that the difficulty with us humans, whether it's the Ashanti or Mesa Verde not discerning the climate change taking place around them, or the citizens of Easter Island not recognizing the tipping point at which the island could no longer support the amount of life that was on that island, that change is so slow, so imperceptible, that it's hard to get agreement among a group of people that we should act. But even after we know that something must be done, even after we've heard a campaign by a now successful president based a lot on this notion that our economy would have to turn green and that we're going to have to deal with global warming and climate change, what was one of the first cuts that the Senate made in the bill, the stimulus bill that's on Capitol Hill right now? It is in greening buildings. What was the second cut that was made? It was in higher education spending. Short-sighted, I can't see the job tomorrow this is producing, ways of thinking is what cause us humans not to be able to act even when we know it's time to act. So Diamond's conclusion is there's a period of denial, then there's a period of decision to act, and then there's a period of not knowing how to act. And what he describes on Easter Island is that in the last frantic decades on Easter Island, more and more of these big moai, the god sculptures, were being crafted. That was what finally the people on Easter Island turned toward, their faith, at a time in which they had already destroyed the environmental superstructure that allowed them to live. So if change is likely to be minimal, and scientific evidence that I've just given you tonight will not convince some of you in this audience, why act? Why act? Sandra Steingraber, in her book, Living Downstream, got the title from an African tale that she tells in the book. And it's a tale, by the way, many of us have heard in other settings beside Sandra's book. It's a book about an African tribe in which, as they lived near a river, they saw a person flowing downstream calling for help. And they went out and pulled the person in and saved them. The next day, there were 2 people going down the river asking for help, and they pulled them in. The third day, there were 3 and 4 and 5. As the weeks went on, they finally built a ramp out into the river just to pull the people from the river. And one day, the chieftain said, let's go upstream and find out what's causing all these people to enter the river. He found that there were 2 warring tribes, one stronger than the other. They were systematically throwing people into the river one at a time. After negotiations to settle the disputes of these two tribes, there were no more people floating down the river. Well, in 2002, in my fall convocation at Berea College, I told this very story, and talked a little bit about Sandra Steingraber's book, but I asked our community, what would it be like if we chose to live upstream? Not remain downstream, not where Sandra Steingraber's family lived, where you receive what the generations have given you and the cancer that it brings and so on, but what happens if we live upstream? What would that kind of perspective bring to the way we would act at Berea College and also act as individuals? What I realized I was doing as a group of scientists called me to meet with them when I said, and remember now, this is 2002. 2002, our government was still denying that global warming was a fact. For those of you who know, I can't think of his name now, the scholar who wrote the book on the environment is getting better, not worse, and had been a Greenpeace participant himself earlier, that book had just come out that year. A lot of our own science faculty believed that the scientific evidence wasn't in. So when I asked the question, which of you know as presidents do, it's really a question with an intended response. We are going to act. On what basis should we act? I made essentially what was a moral argument for action. It was the argument of living upstream and behaving in such a way personally and as an institution that recognized our responsibility, each one of us in this room, for standing 50 years upstream from our grandchildren, and some of us for our children. We are those people standing upstream. How does that change the way we think about our actions or the use of our human resources? The argument I would give this evening is that there are three basic principles we should use. First of all, the precautionary principle. Pretty obvious and pretty simple. Act as though we're living 50 years upstream of those who receive the inheritance of earth we will give them 50 years from now. Before we know, in all cases, why we must act. I'll give you a simple example. What is the tripping point of the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere when we reach an irreversible climate change? None of us knows that. I do know that we were only putting 1.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the air in 1950, and we're putting 6.3 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the air today. But why act? The precautionary principle says you act when you believe that the behavior in which you're engaged could negatively affect those who follow after you, and you have good reason to believe that to be the case. Arnold Schwarzenegger, governor of California, said very simply to his critics, who were very upset that California was increasing EPA mileage and other environmental standards, said, I'm not sure exactly how much we in California are contributing to global warming. But I do know that if I have a son who has cancer, and 80% of the doctors say he's got cancer, you should treat him, and 20% said, no, your son doesn't have cancer, I'm going to listen to the 80%. When we don't listen, I can give you a failed example of our learning. For those of us in this room old enough to remember the 1970s and the Arab oil boycott, I can remember sitting in lines waiting to get gasoline. I can remember us feeling that we were caught at the throat by the choices that Arab countries were making about oil. Our government immediately put into place a variety of policies, one of which was energy credits for certain kinds of reduction in home heating oil. I was a professor at Oberlin College at the time. I received tax credits for putting a solar roof on a new home that I built in Oberlin, the first one in Ohio where the whole roof was a solar set of solar panels. There were incentives for automakers to increase their fleet mile per gallon. At that time, in 1973-74, the average, now I'm talking about the total fleet now, including trucks in the big three automakers, was 13 miles a gallon. By 1997, it was 22 miles a gallon. Do you know what it is today? 20 miles a gallon. The threat went away, and we reverted to our, let's have a big SUV, let's have the big Hemi engines. Let's forget we were waiting in oil lines, and so of course many people weren't waiting in those oil lines because you weren't born yet. From my point of view, the precautionary principle is really a principle about acting when you have enough evidence that suggests the action you take can be positive. The action you take can be positive. That would be true as individuals of you in this room. It would be true of Iowa State University. In the 1990s, when our big three automobile companies were reverting to the larger cars and less miles per gallon overall the fleet average, Toyota and Honda as companies were making exactly the opposite decision. They were looking into the future, and in 1994, the chief executive of Toyota said, by the year 2010, we want 20% of our cars to be hybrids, looking 16 years into the future. They may not quite make that given the recession and what's happening right now, although when the gas prices come up, the Priuses will begin to sell again. But look at the Priuses, the Civic hybrids that were put in place when none of the big three had hybrids and kept hanging their hat on hydrogen fuel. The Iroquois, 200 years ago, had a simple principle. Every decision we make should be made with 7 generations in mind. And the 7th generation is unborn. Imagine if we chose that precautionary principle. Every decision we make is not only for myself, but for my 2 daughters, my 5 grandchildren, and then keep on going through the generations. It would change the way we act fundamentally. Second principle, voluntary simplicity. Not forced simplicity, not simplicity out of fear, voluntary simplicity. If you leave tonight with only one statistic in your mind, leave with this one. We Americans represent approximately 5% of the people on this earth. And we use between 20 and 25% of the earth's resources. We Americans are 5% of the world's population and use between 20 and 25% of the world's resources. David Orr, a professor at Oberlin, says he calculated what would it be like if all 6 billion people currently alive today lived a $35,000 a year American lifestyle. Now, I don't think many of us think $35,000 is a very expensive lifestyle, do we? It would take 2 1/2 Earths to provide the raw material for the current generation of people on this earth. 2 1/2 Earths. Actually, Thomas Friedman says it would take 3 Earths. I would invite all of you to read a book that just came out last October by Thomas Friedman called Hot, Flat, and Crowded. It's a powerful book in which he recites some of the information I've given you tonight, provides other information, but in his book, he says climate change is it's not a matter if we're going to have climate change, it is how will we live with it, and how do we slow it down, Bionic diversity is decreasing enormously. How do we live with that in a world in which many of the things good that come to us humans come from the rainforest and other species? And what can we do with a population that is still growing? But the chapter of his book that struck me was related to the statistic I just gave you. 5% of us Americans use 20 to 25% of the world's resources. And he says very simply in his one chapter, we can't afford any more Americas. That's the title of the chapter. We can't afford any more Americas. Now that may sound sort of silly, but I'll remind you that just 4 years ago, when China was growing at double-digit growth in their economy, and India as a service economy was also growing at a very, very fast pace, we met a point when we couldn't get concrete for some of our jobs at Berea College. Concrete wasn't available. We couldn't get drywall for some of the construction projects. I'm sure that's happened in Iowa and places as well. And oil had reached the peak point where there was more demand than there was supply. And shortly after that, our gasoline prices went to $4 a gallon. Do you know what's happened since only 4% of the world, in the whole world's population using gasoline, we've only had a 4% decrease in the use of gasoline, and the prices have fallen to below $2 a gallon. And I just saw the other day, I won't name the company, one of the big 3 automakers said, we're bringing our SUVs back. When will we learn? We cannot afford 6 billion Americans. And remember, in America, we're spread across a socioeconomic spectrum. What is living upstream? Living upstream means accounting for what we use today in real terms, in ecological terms, as well as economic terms. The book Natural Capitalism by Paul Hawken and Emory Levin, it was published in 1999, said if we were to actually calculate not only the raw materials and manufactured costs, but the disposal of all of the things we throw away, costs would rise between 20 and 30%. That was a general estimate that Hawkins, by the way, is an economist. We would use less. We would keep what we have longer. We might not even own what we have. Imagine having a refrigerator that you don't really own, that belongs to the company. And they come and add parts to it and replace it when new energy efficiency measures come along. The refrigerator talks back to the company and says which systems are becoming weak. And you have a refrigerator for 30 or 40 years. Is there anyone in this room who's seen a 30-year-old refrigerator? I have. We did that in the community where I grew up in Ohio. And I can guarantee you, we have 20-year-old cars too. If you go to some of the third world countries today, you'll find cars that are 30, 35 years old working just fine. Now, they're not very good in terms of pollution, but they're working just fine, and they're not taking natural resources away. But what if every one of those people wants to buy a Prius? That's the reason we cannot afford any more Americas. When I look to the future, I'm 67 years old now. I'm not worried about having resources in my lifetime. But I look at my daughters who are 42 and 38, and look at my grandchildren who are between 9 and 15. And what I recognize is it's their world that I'm concerned about, yet I'm living upstream of their world. The choices I'm making will determine the resources they have available to them. And that's true for every one of us in this room. Voluntary simplicity. Finally, living upstream is not just about the environment. It's about who we are and how we live. In her book, Juliet Schor's book called The Overworked American, published in 1996, I think it was, She says, we Americans feel terrifically overworked, and 35% of us say that our jobs are not sustainable. Those of us who still have jobs. Our jobs are not sustainable. And one of the biggest reasons for that change was technology. I purposely didn't bring my BlackBerry with me tonight. I feel like I'm semi-naked. Because I now am connected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to my work, to that BlackBerry. When I took our granddaughter, my wife and I took our granddaughter out to dinner with her family a week ago in Maryland. After we'd had the general dinner conversation and before the dessert course came, we saw both our granddaughter, who's 15, and our grandson, who's 13, with their eyes down. What were they doing? Texting. Telling their friends what they had for dinner, having a conversation that was separate from our human conversation. But if you think what that's doing to the world in which we live, human interactions are lessening in terms of their depth. When I go to one of our favorite restaurants in a town just 12 miles north of Berea, where there's also a state university, I will often see pairs, young men, young women, having dinner together, 4, 6 in a booth. I've never seen them go through a whole meal without being on the telephone with someone not at the dinner. But imagine in the workplace what that means. What that means is you can't get away from your work, and President Joffrey and I can tell you how sometimes you turn those contraptions off so you can have space in your life. Our lives are not sustainable. Julia Shore makes a connection of why are people working so much? Why do we have 60% of the families that have 2 persons in them? Those people working? Why do we have among those people almost a third of them with a second job? So we can buy. So we can buy things. Bill McKibben, in a book he wrote just a year ago, 2007, a book called The Deep Economy, says, we are killing ourselves with work, and we're killing the world with what we take from them that we buy with our work. We work to buy. We even borrow to buy. And he concludes his book by saying, we cannot be rich for long by impoverishing the world around us. We cannot be rich for long by impoverishing the world around us. Simply put, a more sustainable work and personal life will result in a more ecologically sustainable world as well. The two are intertwined. Living upstream, for me, essentially means living sustainably, both personally and as we as an institution at Berea College, trying to move toward that sustainable goal. While scientific evidence often frightens us, none of us make important decisions based on fear. Usually not. All you have to do is follow the heart patients who are told to exercise and lose weight. And if you've seen the studies of those, 3/4 of them do not do what they need to do and know they must do, or they're in danger of dying. Fear is not the way to respond to our world's ecological crisis. Altruism is. We humans have reached out to others, our children, our friends. When your neighbor has fallen down, has gotten sick, do you do things for your neighbor? Of course. We can be inspired by the positive dimensions of what a sustainable life living upstream offers. And if we have that enthusiasm, I can tell you the skeptics on our campus, and there were many, in the early 90s, there wasn't a lot of argument in the early 90s about some of the information I've just given you. And we were doing very significant, spending real dollars on renovations that were moving us toward a greener and greener campus. It was finally when some said, oh, we've saved $1.2 million this year because we built a new heat plant, and that was 50% of the heat plant budget. And that money came back in faculty salaries, it came back in scholarships for students, it came back in enriched programs. So there are incentives that are built into living a sustainable life. But for me, living upstream is about trying to ensure that my grandchildren have fresh air to breathe, clean water to drink, and food they can eat from the soil around their house. But today in Silver Spring, Maryland, where my grandchildren live, they were told last year on 32 different days it wasn't safe to go outside and breathe the air. That's the urgency of the ecological crisis that we face. But the response is for each one of us to think about how we can be among those living upstream. We're a college of only 1,500 students, a campus of 140 acres. Look at your opportunity here at Iowa State. You have an enormous opportunity to set directions. Yes, we can point toward those directions. And yes, it's not easy getting from point A to point B. But folks, we're going to get to voluntary simplicity or involuntary simplicity. That's the truth of the matter. I just don't want to bequeath that to my grandchildren or to your children. Let's live upstream. Thank you. Questions, comments? I love good debates. There are 2 microphones, and if you walk to the microphones, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And for those of you who can come tomorrow, what I'm doing tomorrow is showing about 50 slides of what we've actually done at Berea College. You're going to get to see how living upstream can produce good fruits in physical terms. Any questions, observations?
Hi there. I'll get things started tonight. You talked about the 30-year washing machine concept, and I guess I've traveled in India, and I guess I've seen a lot of these folks who want jobs, and I'm sure in China it's everybody knows that's how our economy runs, is on, China produces cheap stuff that we buy. And so I guess my question is, what are we supposed to do with all those millions of people in China who want, who stand in line for hours just to get, a volunteer position at some of these factories? Thanks.
You're welcome. We took our 13-year-old grandson to India for 12 days in December and early January. India is a place where I've lived and also a culture I've studied now for almost 40 years. The economic collapse that India is experiencing today, they blame on us. Why? They saw their fortunes go up when we sent offshore many of the service industries, and if any of you have a Dell computer, an IBM computer, and hear that wonderful lilting voice of an India English, you know that Bangalore and many other places, Hyderabad, have become centers of American businesses. Now those folks can buy washing machines and cars and things like we buy. But in going between these cities just now, less than a month ago, and you see the devastating poverty in village after village after village, folks, there are not enough materials to provide washing machines and 2 cars per family for all of those people. And that's partly our responsibility. Why? Because remember, if we're 5% of the world's population and using 20 to 25% of the resources, where are we getting those resources from? America and around the world. And if those resources happen to be service industry resources, then we make them dependent upon us, but we also invite them into our lifestyle, which is not sustainable. The hardest thing, how many of you are students right now here at Iowa State? This is the hardest thing for a man of my age to say to someone of your age. You can't live the lifestyle that you've been living the last 10 to 15 years. You will not be able to live that lifestyle for your whole lifetime. You may for a period of that lifetime, but not your whole lifetime. Why? We ran out of capacity to even buy. And then we borrowed. And by 1997, the average American family had $12,000 in credit card debt, credit card or other bank debt that was non-mortgage related. Last year, it was $22,000. We were borrowing to buy. We can't live that lifestyle, so how could we possibly think we can export that lifestyle to close to 3 billion people in China, 2.5 billion people, and 1 billion people in India? It's not possible. We will have to use less for them to have more, is the answer to your question. We will have to use less for them to have more. And I'm talking about the basics. Remember, 1 out of 6 does not have fresh water. 2.6 out of 6 do not have access to proper sanitation. That's the world we live in, and that's the new age. Now, I can become very grumbly and grousy about this, but you know, that's a wonderful challenge when you think that some of the most beautiful things that happen in this world are things that happen between people. Some of the most important times that I've had in my life are drinking out of a small stream next to my grandfather's house while he was plowing with 2 horses in his field. He had no electricity in his home, no running water in his home. He had a pump at the kitchen sink. He had a radio with a battery under it. We got to listen to Edward R. Murrow 1 hour every night. Those were among some of the happiest years of my life. Waking up in the morning and breaking the ice on the water pitcher because the temperature had gotten down to 30 degrees in the house. Now, I'm not recommending that lifestyle for everyone, but folks, that's in one person's lifetime. Look how our lifestyles have changed. He was living a sustainable lifestyle. We're not. What's in between? How can we find a life that is exciting, meaningful, enjoyable, but not filled with so much stuff? That's my answer to your question. We will have to use less if they're going to have more. And yet there's not enough for all of us to live our lifestyle.
I agree a lot with what you're saying as far as how you tie in economics to your argument, kind of the overextension of Americans in general, you know, to purchase things to support a consumption economy. I guess I'm wondering what you're recommending for a proactive approach that one relatively poor individual, such as myself, I'm about to get into the workforce, but my spending power is pretty low right now. If I want the car that's going to last for 40 years, or I want, you know, the washing machine that's going to last for 30, or whatever the product is, if that's not offered on the market, what's the best way for an individual to try and proactively create that change? Because even if somebody is minded towards these objectives that you're stating here, I'm wondering what's your recommendation as an individual with little influence, you know, a small influential sphere? What's our best way to try and get these things?
Good question. Well, let me say there's more than one answer because we're very different people. And what is a meaningful life to each one of us will vary. Some of you will become an engineer here. I saw the boards in the back with the electric cars and also the design competition home. Get an education and do something about helping us to use less. In Tom Friedman's book, he argues for a green economy, a tremendous shift in the American economy. And the way he puts it is this way. When America can sell Chinese clean coal technology, and by the way, that does not exist today, so please understand, can actually sell the Chinese clean coal technology, we'll become the world leaders. China is opening a new coal-fired power plant every 8 days, spewing out what we saw in the Olympics with skies filled with yellow, mainly sulfur, not all. They're concerned about that because it's killing them. Their illness rates, their hospital stays, and other things are going up, and consequently, the leadership, for practical reasons, are saying we have to reduce the amount of carbon we're putting in the air, coal-fired carbon in particular. You could be that student, along with other students, who are developing the next wave of green implements. Cars, we already have cars that get 50 miles a gallon, right? The Prius, the new Prius this year gets 50 miles a gallon. What happens when fleet averages are 50 miles a gallon? And what's it going to take to move beyond the solar car and these experimental phases where homes can also power themselves? All of us have a chance, and especially those in leadership roles. And once you get a college education, you better be a leader, and you're part of the solution, if you can be. So that's part of the answer. And I can say to you, there will be an economy, a real economy, for those who are living, pointing in that direction. All you have to do is look at what happened between GM and Toyota, the largest car manufacturer in the world, which is now, what, third, I think, GM is? They just went. Maybe they're still second. And it was about the changes in looking forward, living upstream. Now, so one answer is use your education in a way that will actually help communities live with the new world that we're going to be living in, which is a depressed financial world. I believe that to be true. I don't think we can go back to what was true in the last 10 or 15 years for the reasons I just gave. Most economists will say the same thing is true. But there's another option, and that's the option of Wendell Berry. For those of you who know Wendell Berry, the poet. He farms his land with mules. He writes poetry. He teaches at the University of Kentucky. Very bright man. He's a poet farmer. Between those two extremes, others of you will find your way. But the key here, remember, is us changing our behavior first while we're helping to change the institutions around us. This university, the place where we work. So you will find your own way, but it's not, none of us know where that will be today. Yes? Oh, I guess we had over here.
You mentioned how the relationship between sustainable personal life and work-life balance is related to environmental sustainability. In a time of budget cuts and all sorts of economic downturns, how do you maintain those, a sustainable work-life balance with your employees, even at your university?
Well, we are not unprecedented, but we're in one of those extremely rare occasions. We think the last time was 1929 and the Depression. We're at that moment in our economic history. Now, it's a different moment. We've not had 9,000 banks go out of business, which we did during the Depression. We don't have 27% unemployment, which we did during the Depression. But what we have is a very different financial trajectory because it's a world economy now. It wasn't as much a world economy in 1929. I think none of us knows the answer to the question of what we should do to find an economy that's sustainable. None of us knows the answer to that. None of the economists do, and we certainly know our congressmen and senators don't. I was on the Hill just last week, and they'll tell you, we're trying a stimulus package, but we have no idea if it's going to work or not. What we can do during these times is become as imaginative as we can in helping each other. Communities will pull it together again, and we're finding this happening, by the way, in the communities around us. In Appalachia, the communities already had double-digit unemployment before this happened. You find communities coming together. We'll have to help each other. We're going to have to be imaginative in how we apply our own talents to whatever that future is, because we don't know what that future is going to be right now. So I think the honest answer is none of us knows what the immediate future is going to be. I've been talking about a long-range future, because that is pretty clear to me. We don't know if we're in the 15th century or the 14th century. Remember, the 17th century or 18th century is when Easter Island ended. But I do know that we're in that sequence somewhere on Earth. So what the long-term goal is clear to me than how we're going to get there. I wish there were another answer. Yes?
One of the examples of the situations we find ourselves in as organizations or nations is the chasing after luxury or resources. When I went to school, my brothers went to school, they stayed with a family. You know, they lived in a house. That's changed. The colleges now advertise suites and larger student housing and more resources and newer and more extensive. How does a college that's trying to sell sustainability compete with a college that's trying to sell luxury?
Remember, sustainability is a personal, but it's also an economic as well as an ecological statement. If Iowa State becomes a place, I'll give you a simple example. We're renovating a hotel right now on our campus, the Boone Tavern Hotel. For those of you who know, it's a 100-year-old hotel. Will be next month. And it's going to be the first LEED hotel in the region, not just in Kentucky. And it's going to be an eco-tel. We believe that there will be those who want to come, and as we're competing for the ever-increasing, shrinking entertainment dollar of those who stay in hotels, we believe our edge is going to be green, that we're a green hotel. Secondly, whatever we do when we are green can still be pleasant. In fact, I would encourage you to read Paul Hawken and Emory Levin's book on natural capitalism. They give lots of examples of how you can be simple and beautiful. And so, if that person is looking for pure luxury, they may not come. But you're going to have to ask, is that the best fit for the institution that's trying to teach green? So, students will choose not just based on what the residence halls look like, but what it is they can study, the energy and enthusiasm on the campus for the direction the institution is going. And I can tell you that since we have gained some notoriety as being a green college, although there were a lot of other things besides that, our applications have increased about 25%. Now we're a whole different market, and it's not the same comparison. But how much longer schools are going to be able to afford this luxury you've just described is a real question to me, and I want to be on the side of those that are going to survive on the other side of that. And my guess is we're not going to be able to sustain that. The studies of the Delta Project, which was published just last month by Jane Wellman and her colleagues, points out that tuition increases have been rising at 6.6% for the last 30 years. Household incomes have been rising at 3.3%, which is barely inflation, which means they've been remaining essentially constant in constant dollars. That gap is not sustainable, and this gap is putting juice bars in recreation centers, making suites with gold-plated fixtures in them. That isn't sustainable. So if I were at Iowa State, I would be sitting right outside of your president saying, yes, let's be sustainable in the long haul and attract by the quality of our programs, not the quality of the living spaces alone, the students that you could attract here. And in fact, I would submit that as I listen to the numbers of what's happened in the last 5 to 7 years here at Iowa State, you've not created that many new luxury residence halls, and you sure have attracted a whole lot more students. That didn't come from building plush suites. That came from the programs you offered, the faculty who are energetic about what they teach, and the students who are happy about being here. So I do think the country club set will always be there. There will be, and I can name the schools, my daughter went to one of those and I taught at one of those schools. There will be the country club schools, and they will continue to attract the country club. Iowa State is a land-grant university. It should be a leader in being green. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you join me in thanking President Shin? And we can take some questions a little bit later. And we hope to see many of you tomorrow morning, and I am sure you can ask one question later on while we release other people. So thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning, 7:45. Thank you so much. What a wonderful, awesome, simply awesome. I think you engaged with,